And hello, so this is me. You got guys some of the introduction. I'm a data scientist and I live in Connecticut. And I'm primarily an R programmer, but I am pretty versatile. I use Python as well. I work at Simple, which is a tech company based in Portland, Oregon. And I have developed 2 packages on the comprehensive R archive network, also known as CRAN, TTB Beer, which is what I'll be talking about today, and Shiny LP, which is a companion package to Shiny, the web framework package, so that you can develop landing home pages as well. And once again, there's the GitHub link where all the material is stored for these slides. So why should you care about this? If you had to leave right now and go to lunch, these are sort of the key points that I want you to take away from this presentation. And the real cause about why you should even care about open government data. And if we really want to foster a supportive and inclusive community that allows people to have a lot of statistical comprehension of their data, and especially around their local community, we, with our expertise and our knowledge about best practices in data science and development, need to advocate for data sets that are analysis ready and suitable for everyone at each level. So you shouldn't be just having a data set where it's going to take somebody with a lot of knowledge to process it. It should be ready to go for beginner up to advanced levels. So what this presentation is about and what it's not about. I know the title can be a little vague. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about open government data and its relation specifically to beer analytics and the difficulties in finding those types of analysis-ready data sets, how to navigate in general to find data sets across the internet. And also, I'm not going to really talk about drunk politics. When you see the word government, it could be really alarming. So I'm not going to really talk about any regulations or hacking or any of those things that are going on in Washington. But I can't not say anything about that. It's been a really interesting time to be a data scientist. When this talk was submitted, the climate was a little bit different than it is currently. So I definitely want to call attention to all of the really interesting opportunities that are going on to really recognize that our data is potentially in danger. And people and activists are coming together to try and save it, download it. It's been really cheap to store data. So there's a lot of these movements going on that we really recognize that data is power. And those that don't value the same things that we do as data scientists won't respect that or keep it going. So that's my last real government spiel. So. All right, so what even is beer analytics? Before I started this whole venture, I just liked beer, and I liked data science. I really didn't see a whole lot of connection between them. But beer analytics is really the use of quantitative methods to improve the production and quality of beer, to measure customer preferences and predict seasonality, gather insights on your competitors. And I really like this story and this connection of this picture. This is William Seeley Gossett, and if you don't know about him, he was a brewer at Guinness in Dublin, and he realized that he could really employ data analytics techniques and statistical analyses to improve farming conditions and make optimal beer, we're all really thankful for that. And but at Guinness, they were really worried about people leaking trade secrets, so he wasn't allowed to publish under his own name. So he developed a pen name, and his pen name was Student. So he developed the Student's Tea distribution. And I really like this example and how we can kind of link a really playful topic like beer with a familiar topic in academia, such as statistics and data science. So thank you, William, for beer. And so I'll get started by really talking about how to discover these data sets for analyses. And straight off the bat, it can be really difficult in general to find data. These are some links to some data sets I've identified. Some of them are free, like the craft beer data set. Others require an academic license, and you have to email and ask. I actually tried to get the Snap Rate Beer data set for one of my grad school projects, and they never answered my email. So once again, it's extremely difficult to get these types of data. There's a number of different APIs that are available. I'm on Untapped. Add me if you're also on Untapped. We can socially drink beer together. But they have a lot of restrictions, and you have to have explicit agreement with Untapped or a lot of the other APIs about what you're going to do with that data. And that really creates a barrier. If we are all interested in analyzing data, we have to jump through a lot of hoops. There's some interesting projects that I really like on here as well that you can go and play with later. Yhat did a really great tutorial on a beer recommender. And it's really awesome that they were able to actually use that data set from Snap Rate Beer before it was taken off the web. So a lot of these tutorials and these projects are out there, but they're being really siloed by the industry. And when you're trying to look for a project and trying to look for corresponding data, it can be really frustrating. It can really influence what you end up doing for that project. And I liken it just to if somebody invites you over, they have a beer in front of you and they don't offer. That is really frustrating and not the way that we should be promoting our open source initiatives. And so in general, how do I personally search for data sets? I do lots of weekend projects, and I usually start on Google, like most people, for everything. I tend to also go to GitHub. They have a lot of really great collections about open source data sets for a variety of topics. The Kaggle data repository is really great. A lot of those have been taken a step further and pre-processed. And then there's also some really great tools that some people forget about, and that's open government data portals. I know Boston's has recently been launched. Connecticut has one in addition to the city of Hartford, where I live near. And I find that most rewarding to go look at data that was reflective of my community. And it really gives me a sense of purpose and why I like that aspect of data science. And a lot of those data sets have corresponding packages to download. There's the R Socrata package that you can easily download these data sets in whatever condition that they may be. And so the US government open data portal is this overarching sort of clearinghouse where there are data sets from a variety of different topics, and they're providing tools and documentation so that you can do your own analyses and inform your data visualizations and all of your projects with this data. There's been some really interesting corresponding apps that are also made with this data, and it's a really great way of getting a centralized view of what's going on in the country. And so I really like this example of analysis ready. So day one, you can hand it off to a developer or a data scientist, and they can begin reading it into R with the common functions, regardless of the domain-specific mutations and transformations that they would have to do. A really great analysis ready data, which is really rare, takes minimum amounts of cleaning, and has really interpretable data fields. And it really is helpful if you have a data dictionary or some sort of linkage to how that data was created and how it's transformed. And this is a really great example on data.gov of a CSV file that offers right at the top the link to download, and also gives an opportunity to have users rate the quality of the data. And so this is an example of data set that is not analysis ready. This is the Brewer's report from the US Department of Treasury. And this data is contained in a PDF, and it's a little difficult to get at. It has a lot of mixed column types if you try to bring it into R. And there's also a lot of there's not a stronger ecosystem within R to parse PDFs, so they can be really difficult to work with. And this is not the exception. There are many of these types of data sets on data.gov that are inherently listed as an HTML file, which would be great. We can go web scrape that, but when you get there, they're actually PDFs, which is quite tricky. And so the real point of all this in general is just because the data set is open doesn't mean it's accessible. Like I said before, there are a lot of these data sets on data.gov, and they're listed with their corresponding file format and their appropriate attribution for documentation, but they still create a barrier for people to capture the data. And especially for us, we don't want to spend that much time cleaning data, that much time processing. We want to get straight to our insights and try and provide information to our stakeholders. And so I think the majority of our packages that are developed are really out of innovation or frustration that people have. They've worked on something and they've had to do it more than once, and so they develop a package or they develop a project or tutorial to help others, which is a really great part about our community. So in all of this, when I was trying to develop a project based on beer data, I learned to, in general, become better at finding those types of data sets and become better at web scraping. I also wrote a tutorial on how to get brewery ratings from within my state based on Beer Advocate, and I processed the data with R, and that was published in the Trend CT. It's a news publication within Connecticut that tries to bring some data visualizations and stories to go alongside all of the happenings in the great state of Connecticut. And so I developed an R package for beer statistics called TTB Beer. It's kind of a mouthful, but it's based on the acronym from the US Department of Treasury. And it's a data package that you can go and download a few data sets that have been already pre-processed. I've already done the work for you if you're interested in getting at this data. One of the data sets is based on materials from that brewery report that I showed before that was contained in a PDF. And then the next data sets are all broken up for historical tax rates, or someone might call it SIN rates for alcohol and beer and wine. And those are all available in this package. It's available on CRAN. It's available also on GitHub. Please send me a PR if you would also like to do some hard work and parsing some data. I definitely welcome contributions. And so a little bit of insight into how I developed this package. Like I said before, I sat there with a beer and went through a PDF and put the data in Excel, and then I brought it into R. And that was really due to some initial trials with some of the limited PDF parsing packages within R. And so that was my only cause at the moment. I really wanted that data, and I wasn't going to spend a considerable amount of time writing any type of other scrapers, so I did the best thing possible, which was hand code it. The next aspect, which was much easier, was web scraping using the R package rvest. And I'll go in a little bit more detail about that. And that process is a little bit more repeatable if they don't change the website at the US Department of Treasury. I don't have any control of that. Yeah, awesome. So a little bit more about web scraping in R, especially for the historical tax rates. So it's really simple. It takes a little bit of trial and error, but what you do is you specify your HTML document, your URL. You go and you select parts of the documents that correspond to particular CS selectors, a class, an ID, and to really get at what the object is on the table, on the web page that you want, and then you extract the parts out to a data frame, to a list, to a matrix, and then you do your R magic in it. And this was an interesting aspect of web scraping, because usually it's really great that I didn't have to sit there with a PDF and look through all the data. But this particular URL had all of the data sets for those 8 different buckets listed in. So a lot of it took a lot of manual edge case fixing, which I used Stringer and manually fixing dates up to correspond as best as possible. And this is a screenshot from a couple days ago. So this data is still existing in this form on the US Department of Treasury. It's unfortunate. And so I find it really particularly interesting when other people find what I do interesting as well. And so this is a post that I grabbed from Twitter. And from this data that was once locked in a PDF and nobody could get access to, you can then just start to come up with hypotheses and interesting applications about, so what were the spikes going on in 2014, 2015. And originally, somebody couldn't do that. That data was locked. It was preventing it from being analyzed. And I find it really interesting that is now the next level of data advocacy in a way. Cool. And with that being said, alongside this package, I noticed that I couldn't just scrape the data or hand transcribe it. I had to say something about it. And so the data.gov has a platform where you can submit data issues about if things are miscoded or if things aren't listed right. And I wrote in particularly about the data set on the US Department of Treasury. They have it listed as an HTML. And when you go to that, of course, the web page is an HTML, but has a ton of list of PDFs. So it was wrong. I wanted to make sure that it could eventually be fixed. And it was really great. You get some response back from the government. They know about this problem and they just won't fix it. So yeah, so that's the great cause about the package, not having that reliance on them, but from people in the community that are willing to do that hard work for everyone else. And it's still open and pending, so maybe they'll fix it and maybe they won't. And so to just sort of wrap things up, I want to leave you with some points about analysis-ready data, especially for beer, is really difficult to find. And sometimes you might even have to pay money for it to get a processed data set. Open government data portals, such as data.gov, are really good for those of us who are trying to search for a data set for a project. That's usually some part of the time that I spend the most at thinking about what's the data set I want to look at, what am I interested in on a Saturday morning when I should be mowing the lawn. And also that data quality really needs to be championed to ensure that these government agencies are being accountable and providing accessible data, because there are no consistencies across them. They have this platform and they can release the data, but they're making our lives really difficult by not having any practices and standards. So it's really important when you get the opportunity, file an issue, email those people that are responsible for this so they can utilize some best practices. So that's it for me. Thanks. Questions? If not, I'll hang out in the back. Awesome. Oh, if you have questions, there is a microphone for you.
Can you talk about the experience with publishing your package on CRAN?
Yeah, so I have the book by Hadley Wickham called Our Packages, which is a really great resource. It's available online as well. And I followed the directions in there, as well as looking to other people in the community on GitHub who had published specific data packages, such as Julia Silge, who has one on Jane Austen novels. And that was a really great example on how I used. This was my first package I ever submitted to CRAN. And I did this because I had just come back from the USAR conference in Stanford and was really inspired to contribute. But it is definitely, it's definitely a difficult but manageable process. There's a lot of people, if you have questions, they're willing to ask and provide resources, but it's definitely really worthwhile. It gives your package and your data and your code the most opportunity for everyone else to experience it, to modify it, to contribute, to keep the flow of knowledge going. So I would really recommend if you have functions like invest a little bit of time in. There are tons of resources out there to help you get your package up. All right. Sweet. Thank you.
All right.